Alright, so YCS Richmond just concluded. There are still so many decks present in the meta. Infernoble caught us off guard completely, and there is much to talk about. So please like the video if you enjoy me doing these event breakdowns. And if you were maybe there, let me know of the experience and if you enjoy playing in this type of format and what deck you're currently running. So I think it's best we start off by doing the deck breakdown, and I have it over here. First, we're going to talk about the entire deck breakdown for the event. And as we can see, obviously the format is insanely diverse, but Rescue Ace is in the lead with 12% representation, and I think all of us kind of expected this. It just makes a lot of sense. Also, the actual Rescue Ace mirror match is really interactive, and it, like, the better player is probably always going to win, which is great. And moving on to Purdy. Purdy is also a nice choice right now, also because it has a good Rescue Ace matchup. And Tearlament is still very popular amongst players. We all know that the deck can just be insanely explosive and just really, really good. And sometimes the RNG is just going to mess with you, but there's not much you can do about that, really. And then we also have Unchained. And I want to sort of pause here for a second, because if we take a look at top 32, and I know I'm sort of jumping in between, but it's going to make sense. So if we take a look at top 32, Unchained has good conversion rate because it is the highest represented deck with 8 slots in top 32, whereas it is the 4th when it comes to the representation at the actual event. So pretty much Unchained is like a good deck still. It is very solid, but you need to be a good pilot to actually play it, and also expect to do well because it is going to reward good gameplay, playing around cards, and I think it's very apparent when you look at a match and you see someone making mistakes and suboptimal plays compared to the players that do well. For example, Jesse was the first one after Swiss, and he played Unchained. And of course, you know, him being a renowned player, it makes a lot of sense for him to do well, and also with this deck that rewards good gameplay. So it is like that with most of the decks, actually, but with Unchained, I just figured it would be interesting to point out the actual conversion rate. So next up, we have Monodium, which became a little more popular with people doing well with the deck at big events, and it is just a very nice deck. I'm personally a fan of it. I think it's a very, very solid combo deck, but if we take a look down here, there is no Infernoble, which is also a combo deck, but it is not represented enough, and I guess it is going into other, but then we're gonna take a look at the top 32 again, and you will be able to see Infernoble there. And I just feel like Monodium as well as Infernoble, and also down here we have Dragon Link, for example, also Rika, but those would be the dominant combo decks. And to me, personally, Monodium and Infernoble just stand out. They can play a lot of non-engine, and they just perform really well in this particular meta. For the most part, if you win a die roll, you are probably going to win. There's a very high % chance of that, and it was very well put by Pac in his interview, post-match interview. He pretty much said, like, I would rather play a deck, since all decks need to play a non-engine and are going to struggle a little bit going second, I would rather play a deck where I know for a fact I can win game 1 if I win the dice roll. And it just makes a ton of sense, and that's why we also have the combo decks over here, like Dragon Link, Rika, and Monodium. And if we take a look at some other decks, Branded Chimera is interesting because it fell off in terms of, you know, how popular it is. It did feel a little bit like one of those like shiny new toys type of deck where people just get interested and then it just kind of becomes a little boring, maybe. It felt like that with Dispia before, and I might be wrong, but it just feels like that to me. And then there's also the fact that, you know, some other decks are just better. People sort of like strayed away from Chimera just naturally, and it is still a solid deck, but it is not as highly represented. And we also have Flunder as well as Vanquish Soul over here, and also Labyrinth, and all of these decks prove themselves to be worthy contenders right now. Flunder has a good Unchained matchup. It's just that Unchained has some other non-engine in the deck right now, so it makes the matchup a little bit easier, but Flunder is still nice, and Vanquish Soul as well. As long as it doesn't break, it's a nice contender, I feel like. And Labyrinth is just really good. With Furniture, Chaos Angel, and all of your chap cards, I think you are fine with Labyrinth, and especially if you play versatile trap cards, so you're able to pretty much combat any deck that you face. So moving on to top 32, we're pretty much going to see almost the same exact pie chart but Infernoble as well as Mikanko, Dynamorphia, Kashtira, and Salamangreid are different. So all of those decks would go into other. So Infernoble was a little surprising. We saw it quite a lot on stream. So Infernoble with Sinful Spoils or Infernoble with Mikanko and Sinful Spoils. So I'm not certain in which category that deck would place, but I'm pretty sure it would be Mikanko, because it like has a small package of Infernoble. I could be wrong, but like these two decks really prove themselves to be, you know, a couple of the combo decks that are formidable and should be respected right now. At least I think so. You know, with the Mikanko, like you are so consistently getting through that lock, and if you are only relying on your Mikanko side of things, it's really tough to break that board. Like it cannot be targeted, cannot really be dealt with if you don't have specific like removal. So yeah, you know, Mikanko is becoming more and more popular, and I'm kind of here for it. I think it's quite interesting, and we'll see what happens moving forward. And if we take a look at Rescue Ace, it was the most represented deck in Swiss, and now it is the third most represented deck in Top Cut. The other ones, like all of them are, you know, the ones that are the most represented, but Rescue Ace, it only has 4 people in top 32. Now this could be contributed to a lot of factors. Pretty much people are prepared for it a little more, so they know where to disrupt it. The deck is still, like, the consistency is better, but they can still struggle sometimes if you don't necessarily open both of your engines. So you can play around hand traps. Sometimes a well-timed hand trap is still going to stop you, so there's also that. And also many people play it, so there might be some players that just aren't that great, and therefore the conversion rate is also not going to be that high. And I guess moving on to the Dynamorphia and Kashtira and Salamangreid, we can mention those as well. Salamangreid is so funny to me because like it's been around for so long and it's still doing well, but I'm really excited for it. Gaza obviously being at 3 does a lot for the deck. And yesterday at the UK Open, we also witnessed a Salamangreid mirror match if you were watching the stream, and that was really fun to watch. And Kashtira we saw in round 1 of the event, and it's just pretty much this stun deck, which is kind of unhealthy if you think about it, but it's the way Kashtira has to be built right now because it literally has nothing else. Like there's no backbone to it, so you kind of just have to play all of these stun cards and floodgates and stuff, and just, you know, it's great for this Kashtira player. That's all I can say. And as for Dynamorphia, I'm really not a huge fan of this deck, but people play it with Exosister from what I've seen, so I don't know if this is that version, but for everyone that always hates on me for hating on Dynamorphia, there you go. There's your top. And that's all I have to say. So that's pretty much when it comes to top 32, that's it. So let's move on to top 16, top 8, and top 4, as well as the eventual finals, of course. So here we have the top 16 pairings with deck types, and for the most part, let me actually pull up another picture. Okay, so we have 4 Unchained, 3 Infernoble, 3 Tier Limit, of which one of them is Horus Tier Limit, as well as 2 Rescue Ace, 2 Purdy, 1 Mikanko, and 1 Labyrinth. So still we have the top performing decks very much present in the biggest amount in Top Cut. And again, it just makes a lot of sense. Something that's like a little bit interesting, I guess, would be Labyrinth, making it all the way to top 16. However, not making it into top 8 if I am not mistaken. Let me pull up the top 8 pairings as well. So we have Unchained, Sinful Spoils, Rescue Ace, obviously, Horus Tier Limit. So Horus is the only version of Tier that actually made it all the way to top 8, as well as Purdley and Sinful Spoils Infernoble when it comes to the other decks. So Mikanko made it to top 16, no further than that, as well as Labyrinth. But both of those are amazing showings for the deck, specifically Mikanko. It just kind of came out of nowhere. A lot of players at the same time started to bring this deck to big events, and now it made it all the way to top 16. So I think that's awesome for everyone that's running Mikanko. And yeah, for the most part, we still have Unchained. It is just proven to be consistent and good at what it does. Only 1 Rescue Ace over here in top 8, and no Rescue Ace in top 4 actually. Moving on to top 4, here we have Purdy, Unchained, and Sinful Spoils Infernobles. No Rescue Ace in the finals or in top 4, which, you know, the deck is still really good. This doesn't mean anything. But let's talk about Purdy now. Unfortunately, its streak got cut short in top 4 with Mistaken Arrest. It's just what happened, and it is unfortunate, but the deck is really good still. And I feel like if you pilot this deck well, it is really tough to beat you, because it just shines in going second as well as going first, which cannot be said for that many decks actually. And yeah, still very much a formidable deck to contend with, but it stopped, its path stopped in top 4, as well as for Infernoble. But this Infernoble Sinful Spoils deck with, you know, brand new interesting combos and just ways of playing, like I said at the beginning of the video, really caught all of us off guard. And it was just an enjoyable experience to watch, genuinely, especially being piloted by Puck, who's a renowned player, and really gave us the experience of this deck and how it plays when it is played properly. Unfortunately, just like with Purdy, you know, it got stopped in top 4, but still a really, really impressive accomplishment. And this brings us to the finals, which were just Unchained versus Unchained, but this is the format we are in. Yeah, I just feel like I pretty much said it already, you know, this deck is consistent, it is good, and it just makes a ton of sense that it won. And to round the video off, I figured we would go through a couple decks that did well on stream and that I would maybe want to point out because they were interesting. The number one thing that comes to mind is Phantom Knight Horus Adventure. That one is really cool. People are really like fans of the deck. And I was personally really excited to see it on stream, and I just felt like if this wins, like this is just very good confirmation for everyone trying to pick up this deck and just being really hyped about it. It seems like it has potential, but it just has to be explored a little bit further. And then we also have Sinful Spoils Infernoble, like we talked about already. The deck is nice and Sinful Spoils did a lot for it, and I really think this deck is going to be quite a threat moving forward, and we kind of have to familiarize ourselves with what the deck does and how to beat it. And also Manadio Mono on stream, as well as Branded Chimera and Purdy. So those would be a couple of decks that I felt like are worth mentioning. And pretty much the format is diverse, but it doesn't seem unhealthy, at least to me. So I guess I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm interested to see what, you know, what the future brings and which decks still remain at the top, which decks maybe fall off, and how things shift with new products coming out. So we will have to wait and see for that. But thank you for watching all of my what just happened ad videos. I always love doing these event breakdowns, and yeah, hopefully you liked it. If you did, make sure to give it a like, as well as share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.